Welcome to Skytech-Lens. In the opening months of 2025, the Trump administration stunned both domestic and international observers by announcing sweeping new tariffs on Canadian lumber, citing national security concerns as the primary justification. The move was sudden and its implications were immediately felt across North America. The total tariff rate soared to an astonishing 45%, a level not seen in decades, sending shockwaves through the lumber industry and financial markets alike. A 10% duty was slapped on softwood timber, a critical material for countless construction projects and a staple import for American builders. Meanwhile, certain processed wood products faced an even steeper 25% tariff, making everything from plywood to finished boards significantly more expensive overnight. These tariffs, enacted under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, were part of a broader protectionist push targeting not just Canada, but multiple countries. The administration argued that these measures were necessary to defend American industries from what it called unfair foreign competition. The construction and housing sectors were hit hard and fast, as the cost of imported lumber spiked overnight. Builders scrambled to recalculate budgets, and many projects ground to a halt as uncertainty spread. Industry leaders warned that the U.S. market couldn't absorb such a shock without serious consequences. The stability of the housing market, already under pressure from rising interest rates, was suddenly at risk of unraveling. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau swiftly condemned the move, calling it an attack on fair trade. Meanwhile, U.S. markets reacted with anxiety, and stock prices for home builders and related industries dropped sharply as investors braced for turbulence. Despite mounting criticism from economists, industry groups, and even some lawmakers, the administration doubled down, insisting the tariffs would protect American jobs and revive domestic industry. But as the policy took effect, it became clear that the real-world impact was far from the intended outcome. Construction delays mounted, and unfinished homes dotted the landscape. The tariffs didn't just target a foreign competitor, they threatened the backbone of American home building, putting thousands of jobs and countless projects in jeopardy. Instead of revitalizing U.S. forestry, the policy set off a chain reaction of rising costs, layoffs, and economic uncertainty. Analysts warned that the ripple effects could last for years. The stage was set for a costly lesson in the realities of global trade, as supply chains strained and international relationships frayed. The American dream of affordable homeownership was about to face its toughest test yet, as families across the country wondered if they could still afford a place to call home. America's dependence on Canadian lumber runs deep, shaping the very framework of its cities and towns. For decades, the flow of wood from Canada has been a quiet but essential force behind the American dream of homeownership and growth. The U.S. imports nearly a third of its lumber, and a staggering 85% of that comes directly from Canada. This isn't just a matter of convenience, it's a necessity, rooted in geography, economics, and the sheer scale of American construction. Canadian wood is essential for everything from sprawling suburban neighborhoods to high-rise city apartments. It's the backbone of new developments, renovations, and even the repair of aging infrastructure. Builders and contractors across the country rely on a steady, affordable flow of Canadian softwood, especially spruce, pine, and fir. These species are prized for their strength, versatility, and cost-effectiveness, making them the go-to choice for framing and structural work. The U.S. simply can't produce enough lumber to meet its ever-growing demand. American forests and mills, while significant, fall short, leaving Canadian supply to fill a critical gap that domestic producers can't bridge alone. The cross-border lumber trade is a finely tuned system, functioning almost as a single market. Every day, thousands of shipments move seamlessly, supporting jobs and businesses on both sides of the border. When tariffs hit, it wasn't just a foreign supplier being penalized, it was a tax on a vital input for American construction. The impact was immediate, driving up costs for builders and, ultimately, for families hoping to buy or renovate homes. The assumption that U.S. producers could quickly replace Canadian imports was deeply flawed. American mills simply didn't have the capacity, resources, or infrastructure to ramp up production overnight. Disrupting this relationship meant higher costs, project delays, and material shortages across the country. Builders scrambled to find alternatives, but options were limited and often more expensive. The American housing market's foundation was built on this partnership, with Canadian wood woven into the fabric of nearly every new home and building. Tariffs threatened to destabilize the entire system, putting at risk not just builders and suppliers, but but also millions of Americans seeking affordable housing. The consequences would ripple far beyond the border, affecting communities, jobs, and the broader economy in ways few anticipated. America's reliance on Canadian wood was about to become painfully clear, exposing just how interconnected and vulnerable this cross-border partnership truly is. The tariffs triggered an immediate surge in lumber prices across the U.S. With supply fixed, costs soared for all lumber, not just Canadian imports. The price for 1,000 board feet of lumber shot up to $765, adding over $10,000 to the average new home. For millions of families, this price hike put homeownership out of reach. Analysts warned that even small increases in lumber costs could disqualify buyers from mortgages. This was a seismic shift. The very people the tariffs aimed to help, working Americans, were hit hardest. Instead of protecting jobs, the policy inflated the cost of the American dream. Domestic sawmills couldn't fill the gap, and scarcity drove prices even higher. The result, a windfall for a few, but a burden for millions. The promise of protectionism gave way to the reality of runaway inflation. Government policy, not market forces, was now pricing out the middle class. The administration believed U.S. sawmills would quickly ramp up production to replace the shortfall from Canadian lumber. The idea was simple. With tariffs in place, American mills would step in to fill the gap, creating jobs and boosting the domestic industry. But in reality, American mills were already running near full capacity. There was little room to increase output. The industry had been operating at its limits for years, with no easy way to squeeze out more production. The U.S. faced a persistent shortfall of over 3 billion board feet annually, a gap that tariffs alone couldn't close. Builders and suppliers struggled to find enough wood to meet demand. Industry experts warned it would take a decade or more to reach self-sufficiency, if it was even possible. Building new mills or expanding existing ones is a slow, expensive process. Labor shortages, outdated equipment, and high energy costs plagued the industry. Many sawmills struggled to find enough skilled workers, and much of the machinery was decades old, making it hard to compete with modern facilities elsewhere. Upgrading mills required massive investment and time, neither of which tariffs could provide. Investors were hesitant to pour money into an industry facing so many obstacles. The hoped-for revival of forestry jobs never materialized. Instead, many communities saw mills close or reduce shifts, leaving workers in limbo. Instead, the tariffs exposed deep weaknesses in the U.S. industrial base, highlighting years of underinvestment and neglect. Domestic producers couldn't deliver more wood, so prices just kept rising. Builders and homeowners alike felt the squeeze as costs soared. The policy was built on a myth of untapped capacity, a belief that American mills could simply flip a switch and produce more. In reality, the only thing that increased was the cost for builders and buyers. The dream of affordable, homegrown lumber faded as prices climbed. The supply gap remained, and the market grew more volatile. Uncertainty became the new normal for everyone in the industry. In the end, protectionism failed to deliver on its promises, leaving the U.S. lumber industry and its customers struggling with the consequences. The impact of tariffs was felt on the ground, not just in economic reports. Builders in booming states like Texas and Florida saw profit margins vanish as material costs soared. Many small contractors couldn't get reliable quotes, making it impossible to bid on new projects. Construction slowed, projects were delayed, and some developments were abandoned. Rising new home prices pushed more buyers into the existing home market, driving up prices everywhere. The affordability crisis deepened, locking out first-time buyers and young families. The tariffs, meant to protect American industry, ended up hurting ordinary people the most. From large developers to local carpenters, everyone felt the squeeze. A policy designed to punish a foreign partner was inflicting the most pain at home. The nation's housing engine was sputtering, and the dream of homeownership was slipping away. While Americans struggled, Canadian lumber producers pivoted quickly. Instead of waiting out the tariffs, they sought new customers in Europe and Asia. Orders surged from Japan, South Korea, and the EU. As global buyers looked for reliable suppliers, Canadian companies leveraged existing trade agreements and expanded their reach. The U.S. was no longer their only major market. Major producers like West Fraser and Canfor reported double-digit growth in exports outside the U.S. The tariffs, meant to weaken Canada, actually made its industry more resilient and global. Canadian lumber found new homes around the world. America's loss became Canada's opportunity. Canada's pivot wasn't just luck, it was strategy. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government launched a $500 million support package to modernize mills and expand exports. The goal: redirect at least 10% of lumber exports from the U.S. to new global markets. Trade missions targeted Asia and Europe, leveraging agreements like the CPTPP and CETA. The government partnered with industry to open doors and remove barriers. While the U.S. built trade walls, Canada built bridges. The support gave producers the confidence and capital to innovate and grow. Canada turned a trade threat into a blueprint for long-term strength. Canada's investment went beyond finding new buyers. It modernized the entire industry. Mills upgraded to produce value-added products like engineered wood and high-end furniture components. These advanced materials commanded higher prices and were in demand for sustainable construction worldwide. Canada branded its lumber as a green, climate-friendly alternative to steel and concrete. The government and industry promoted sustainable forestry practices, boosting global appeal. The U.S. tariffs forced innovation that might have taken decades otherwise. Canada emerged as a leader in advanced, sustainable wood products. The crisis became a launchpad for global dominance. The lumber tariffs left the U.S. with stalled projects, higher housing costs, and no real gains for its industry. Canada, meanwhile, modernized, diversified, and found new global partners. The policy meant to protect America ended up hurting its own consumers and builders. Canada's industry, forced to adapt, became stronger and more independent. Government investments spurred innovation and green branding. By 2027, Canada was on track to become a top global lumber exporter. The lesson: protectionism, in a global economy, can backfire, hurting those it aims to help. America paid the price, while Canada built a stronger future. The trade war's unintended consequences reshaped the industry and the world's supply chains. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.